Hi, Dr. Phil Phlox here, also known as John Billingsley. I volunteer for the Hollywood Food Coalition. We serve terrific meals to the unhoused 7 nights a week. We assist 100 nonprofits with their food needs. We work with community partners to address food insecurity in Southern California. If you're in LA, come and volunteer with us at hofoco.org/volunteer, and any Federation credits you can spare go a long way.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the place for amazing pin collectibles, with over 400 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every month.
Stay tuned for a special discount code good on your next order at fansets.com just for Discovering Trek listeners. Fansets. Our pins have character.
Bird people, sky snakes, and a shot at redemption. Episode 7 brought us an unexpected welcome back to a character that didn't exactly leave on good terms back in Season 1. After abandoning Starfleet and the crew of the Cerritos to save her own skin, will Peanut Hamper finally come around to what Starfleet is all about? Well, let's find out. Step into that turbo lift and hit the down button, folks. My name is Dan Davidson, and we are Discovering Trek: Lower Decks. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to Discovering Trek, the Star Trek Universe Companion, presented, as always, by Fansets. Episode 7 of Lower Decks was a completely different and unexpected story that, for me at least, was one of the best episodes of the entire series, let alone the season. With a story almost entirely focused on Peanut Hamper's return to Lower Decks, we get to see if she has redeemed herself after abandoning her post back in Season 1. Now, lucky for me, I'll never be concerned with these two ever abandoning their posts. Mutiny and killing the captain is always a possibility, but until then, I can always count on them for some great discussion. So welcome back, Kasey and Bill. Great to have you here, as always. And Bill, this was an episode that you didn't think I was going to like, and I actually loved, and I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, that's because you normally don't like good things. So thanks, Dan. It's good to be here. I love it when Star Trek takes chances, and this episode of Lower Decks does just that, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely, I am as well. And Kasey, don't lie to me, man. You want to hang out with Raw Dog, fly through some clouds, and get all cozy under a waterfall, don't you?
The chances with this episode I like to take is just to throw myself off a ledge.
And with that, we'll have a lot to discuss. That's a very interesting description, and I'm picturing it in my mind, and I'm not going to lie, I'm smiling. We're going to have a lot to discuss,
Sure.
as we always do with this week's episode of Lower Decks. But before we do that, Bill, why don't you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with us to give us their thoughts on a mathematically perfect redemption?
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Sure thing, Dan. Listeners, we definitely want to hear from you. We want to know all your thoughts about a mathematically perfect redemption. I almost said mathematically, thinking about Dan. It's amazing. And the best way to get in touch with us is to get yourself the Trek Geeks mobile app for your iOS or your Android device. Download that bad boy, tap on the More button, and you can find a bunch of ways to get in touch with us. And while you're at it, check out some app-exclusive content that we have there just for you. Head to trekgeeks.com/app to get all the details. Plus, join our official Facebook group. It's the best Star Trek Facebook group there is. It's Camp Kittimer, and it's super easy to join. So easy that these two Joes here on this podcast also figured it out, and you can get in touch with them there too. Answer a few questions. We'll let you right in. Big thank you to our admins, Haley, Jackie, and Fark, for the great job they do running the camp. And of course, remember, if you send us a comment, we're going to use it. So send us some comments because we'd love to. Dan.
Thanks, buddy.
Black alert. Black alert.
Now, before we start our discussion, we want to warn our listeners that this episode of Discovering Trek Lower Decks does contain spoilers. So if you haven't watched Star Trek Lower Decks Episode 7, stop listening right now. Go on over to Paramount Plus, watch the episode, then head back on over to Discovering Trek. Failure to do that will put you at risk to find out plot developments and character details for a mathematically perfect redemption. All right, gentlemen, I kind of got an idea when when I was doing the introduction of the two of you of what we're going to get for our thumbs up, thumbs down for this week. Way thumbs up for me. I was kind of on the fence because of Bill's warning ahead of time, and I'm like, I'm going to hate this episode, and I loved this episode. It was fantastic. It was different. It was something that we didn't expect. So thumbs up for me. Kasey, let's go to you, because I can't wait to hear your description on this one.
I chopped both my thumbs off, threw them inside a blender, smooshed it up, fed it to a Wolverine outside.
So you loved it?
Maybe?
No. Well, that's one of the good things about our discussions is we can have the disagreements on what we thought. It's still going to be fun. Bill, what about you? I think I know what you're going to say.
I wish Kasey would just be plain about, not mire his thoughts in clever subtext. And, I love this episode. Simply just because, like I said earlier, it takes chances. Mm-hmm. It abandons the traditional Lower Decks format to tell a story that is not only pretty Star Trek, but it's also pretty messed up. And I'm all for that in the Lower Decks universe.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on a lot of those things. Now, there are some things that I did not like about this episode. That there were so many things that I did like about it. One of the things I want to get right off my chest, right at the beginning, is I got to give kudos and also say I can't stand the voice of Peanut Hamper and Heather Donahue, who did the voice. She made me hate Peanut Hamper, even when she was being good. That voice was annoying. It was irritating. She dropped F-bombs. She swore all the time. And it worked perfectly, Bill.
It's like our listeners having to listen to you every week.
Yeah.
Now you know how they feel.
Well, yes, I guess
Perhaps
so.
you can empathize. I actually have no problems with the voice. At first, I thought it was a different voice actor doing the voice for Peanut Hamper. I didn't know it was Heather. I actually thought it was Caitlin Olsen from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because many of the inflections are the same. To find out that it was Heather was even better. So I like Peanut Hamper. I like the fact that Peanut Hamper is a jerk. And
Well, don't get me wrong. I loved what Heather did in this role. It was great. The voice was exactly what we needed for me to have issues with Peanut Hamper, and then it was all justified by the end of the episode with what she did. But Kasey, in addition to everything else that you obviously hated about this episode, what did you think about Heather's performance returning as Peanut Hamper?
Well, I mean, a wonderful performance, no matter if you like the character or not. And I think part of her performance there that made me hate the character even more is that actor did such a good job.
Yeah.
And all of it where, you can be magnificent at your job and people still don't like the character or whatever, but it has no reflection on the person doing the gig.
Louise Fletcher.
Excuse me?
That's what I relate to what Kasey just said.
Oh, okay.
Louise Fletcher did a fantastic job. Rest in peace, Louise. As Kai Wynn, we hated Kai Wynn, but Louise was so awesome in that role.
I was like, she wasn't in this episode.
Thanks, buddy.
I want to apologize real quickly. Earlier I said Heather. I meant Heather because I have it written as Heather, and for some reason
okay.
I read it as Heather. My apologies.
You're talking to somebody who screws up every word in a sentence. So
our listeners care, and so do I.
No, there was a lot about what Heather did that was great, but also extremely irritating at the same time. And there's actually a video that dropped over the course of the last few days, and she's got a lot she's interviewed a lot, and I thought she was fantastic in that as well. So big thumbs up to what she did. The other thing that I really liked in this guys, in this episode was it was an amazing opening. It was the first time that we've had an opening sequence that was different. And it really worked. It was kind of like that callback to what we saw at the end of season 1. I love the dramatic music. I love the visuals. I thought that really set the tone for what we were going to see, Bill.
It was so cinematic, and I really appreciated that. It set the tone that this was going to be a very different episode than we're used to. And the fact that it doesn't feature our series regulars for 85% of the episode,
right?
I think is a bold statement. I love that one-off quality. I hope they do something like this again in the future. I don't think they'll reuse it too much because, there's just so many stories to tell with our Lower Deckers, but I love the way this was employed.
Kasey, anything about that the beginning that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, it was gorgeous. I thought the musical arrangement being different was beautiful. And you know, I think part of it might have been that I felt a bit set up because I loved that intro and I loved the music. And then the rest came. And for me, wasn't the same.
Okay. Well, that's all right. No, it's okay that you didn't like it. One of the things that I liked a lot about that opening sequence is there was a great Castaway callback in the beginning of this when Peanut Hamper is by herself and she creates Sophia, who looks awful lot like Wilson, and I thought that was a great callback. That's some of the things that I like, is some of these really deep cuts that the writers will have and the animators when they do this stuff. And at least did you like that one, Kasey? Was that a good callback to start off your downward trend that happened right after that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there were a few callbacks in there. I mean, Castaway, Lion King, The Great Escape, you know, even the whole Ewokian riff of that village for me. Yeah. I was like, oh, we're back to an ABC Sunday night movie. You know, Ewoks get revenge this Sunday night. So there were definitely some fun aspects in that. That's where I'm going to stop talking.
Bill, what do you think?
No, I love the fact that they were able to evoke some of these other, you know, classic films. You know, I loved the Castaway callback. I thought it was very Peanut Hamper that she sold, I'll say Wilson, down the river so early.
Very quickly.
I mean, like 2 seconds later. It was fantastic. But it was totally in character with Peanut Hamper. But you're right, Kasey, it does have sort of an Ewok's return feel to the village. But I was kind of here for it, especially because we got a planet of owl people.
Yeah, true.
That sounds like a movie itself, Planet of the Owl People.
I like that, and I can, as long as we don't all sing like he does, because he was really bad at his singing. Kasey, I don't want to focus in too much on the fact that you didn't like this episode, but I am intrigued, and I kind of want to get some ideas of some other aspects of what you thought about it that you didn't think it was one of the good ones of the season or the series.
Part of this I keep going back to is, you know, we're not getting 22 episodes in a season. So we're getting what 10, 11, 12, something like that. And I didn't find the Peanut Hamper character strong enough to interest me in a full episode. I don't know if you guys saw Community, but in Community, this would be like if there was a whole episode of one of the side characters, Starburns, which was, you know, an okay comedic thing to have, but wouldn't hold my interest at all. And I at first watching this, I wasn't sure why this episode, why do this in this particular time, depending on where it is in the season. And throughout this episode, I found it was like, I didn't believe for a second that Peanut Hamper is evolving. I think this is the same character going to be the same way, doing whatever it needs to do to save its own butt, no matter what. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what happened. I just didn't have like an emotional connection with this character. And I think having dealt with enough a-holes in my life that I just like,
Thanks.
You know what? Well, you two are included. It was just like, yeah, seeing this kind of narcissistic behavior before really doesn't interest me.
Those are all valid points, man. I mean, when you get right down to it, she is not a nice exocomp. I was going to say person, but that wouldn't have really made sense. And we find out, of course, at the end that she was, you know, faking the entire thing. But it's interesting to hear the things that you don't like about it when we've seen so much positive comments online, and Bill and I liked it so much. How can you not love an episode of Star Trek where the planet's called Areolus? I mean, just right there. I think I was drinking something and I almost spit it out of my mouth when I heard that scene when that light came up. That was just absolutely hysterical. I mean, they take chances. I mean, Bill, you talked about them taking chances in this series, and they certainly draw the line, or they certainly get right to the line, and sometimes they cross over it, and sometimes they don't.
This episode takes some chances beyond sort of self-pleasuring Magatos. as Kasey's kind of pantomime, it kind of jumps over the cliff.
Yeah.
Because this entire episode made me ask myself this question at one point, and I feel kind of weird about asking it on a podcast, but I'm going to do it anyway. Does this whole scene between, I'm going to call him Bird Boy and Peanut Hamper, Raw Dog, right? That's his name?
Raw Dog. Yeah.
Does this make Peanut Hamper a sentient sex toy? I've never thought that I would ever ask this question on a podcast, but here we are.
I'm going to go watch Magato Gamato again.
But I mean, I think that's a valid question.
It is. It is.
It's a very valid
She
question.
was using him. She was using him for her own devious plan.
Here we have a species, an alien race that has eschewed technology. We've seen that plenty of times in Star Trek. You know, they have this technology. They've chosen, we will not use this technology. It'll just lead to bad things. And what happens? The technology uses them. And what a statement.
Uses them, and you can say that again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
uses them.
I'll tell you what. I know, you know, when we saw the Magatos last season doing what they were doing, we were like, wow. I didn't know if they could top it. I don't know if this topped it, but I really do not like seeing a bird tongue being inserted into an Exocomp's like front nozzle or whatever the heck it is. I mean, at least they made it romantic by turning the waterfall into a heart shape of feathers or whatever.
Wait, but this romance is creepy AF.
Oh yeah! Yes. Oh my God! Yes, it is.
I was gonna say it so you'd have to bleep it, but I decided to not.
That's okay.
Creepy AF, dude.
Yeah.
I can't.
It was very, very creepy. It was uncomfortable. I mean, which would you rank worse? The Magatos or this?
Oh, this.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I thought the whole horn rubbing thing was a little strange back in season 2, but yeah, this was very, very strange.
Hey, Magato's got needs. All right.
Yeah. And here you're scraping up against metal.
Right. Yeah. That's not good for anybody.
I guess if there's anything good to come out of the entire sex scenes with Raw Dog and Peanut Hamper was at the wedding, she actually had a beak attached
I know, I saw
to her
that.
nozzle.
That was cute.
I thought that was kind of funny. Oh, we could. Oh, I don't.
But there were a couple of moments here where you thought that Peanut Hamper's redemption might actually be a thing because there's some dialogue regarding forgiveness.
Yep.
You know, and that was actually pretty interesting. I mean, if you look at it as a long con, I mean, it was absolutely the big sell in the whole thing. If you look at it as just a piece of dialogue, it's actually pretty powerful. If they had actually decided to make Peanut Hamper have some kind of redemption, I think that would have been, you know, the perfect speech with which to usher it forth. But the fact there was the double cross at the end just, you know, makes it even better to me.
Absolutely. The dialogue was great. She had the technology to have all the eggs hatch, which was a big moment. She was able to make their poop oily and white again, which I guess is good. I'm not going to even really go into that much more detail. And she saved the elder from the sky snake with the venom. So it was interesting that I didn't really think of this until we saw it later in the episode. She was completely all over the Prime Directive and just completely forgetting about it. But then, of course, they had technology before, so it wouldn't have applied anyway. But still, at that time, she didn't know that.
Well, and much like, you know, 3PO in Return of the Jedi, Peanut Hamper's on the verge of becoming a god to this species.
Pretty much.
And it's a little uncomfortable and a little cool at the same time. Yeah. Because she, Peanut Hamper, is reawakening some of these things within, you know, those bird folk.
Bird folk. I like
bird
that.
Folk.
Bird folk.
Areolans?
And owl people. You've got some great adjectives tonight, buddy.
Thank you. Dan, as always, we want to take this moment to thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. They have been a core part of the entire network for years, and we are so proud of our relationship with them.
Yeah, we absolutely are, man. We met them in Vegas the first year they were in business, and right from the start, we knew that there was something very special about them. Lou, John, and the entire team at Fansets are truly wonderful people, and just like all of you, they're huge Star Trek fans. They love every part of the franchise, and that love and dedication goes into every single Star Trek pin they produce. And there are a lot of them. They have over 400 officially licensed Star Trek pins, and they have new releases every single month. And as a sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, we get to give away Fanset stuff all the time. So you definitely want to keep your ears open for any new announcements where you can win some awesome Star Trek pins.
So friends, head on over to fansets.com, check out their amazing inventory of not only Star Trek pins, but also some other awesome genres, and put a bunch of pins in your cart. And maybe even some accessories like those incredible locking backs to keep your pins secure. Or hey, maybe even an amazing gift certificate for a friend or a podcast co-host. Then at checkout, be sure to enter the special discount code TrekGeeks for 10% off your entire order. That's Trek Geeks in all capital letters with no spaces. And don't forget, when you spend more than $30, you automatically get free shipping in the U.S.
Fansets. Our pins have character. And we thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. I got to say, we've talked about it almost every week, Kasey, but we have great guest voice actors. We have the return of J.G. Hertzler this week. Again, we saw him in season one as the Drookmani captain. It was good to see and hear him again. And one thing, I don't know if I noticed this in season 1, but I'll bring it up now because I'm a big General Martok fan. I think it's kind of cool that this captain has an eye patch, just like Martok does. I thought that was kind of cool. And then we get to see him, and are they dead? Did he get killed, or did he escape? I was not sure based on what we saw at the end of that episode.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Keep things open-ended so anything can happen later on.
That's true. Bill, what do you think?
I think they're going to keep it open-ended. I mean, now that the Pakleds are pretty much neutralized, they're going to need another recurring threat, and why not the Drookmani?
The Junkmen.
Your face is a Junkman.
Dan M. Smart.
Thank you.
Can I bring up the line of the episode?
Yes.
As I watched it again, I'm thinking to myself, if I had to tag one line for this episode that really kind of sets the whole tone, it's set a course for Areolus.
I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah.
Little RoboCop reference there for you.
No, I got it. Really,
but no, I don't disagree with you, man. I just think that the chances that they take in this series works. I don't think there's been one that's really failed, to be honest with you.
No, I don't think so.
I really don't. They just do a great job of it. What else we got going on in this episode, Bill? We got so many things that we could talk about. What else did you really, did you jot some notes down that you wanted to make sure you brought up?
How have we gotten this far and not mentioned Jeff Combs again?
Oh, I am going to be suggesting. I'm going to be talking about him.
No, but we've gotten this far. I mean,
yes.
We've already brought up JG. We may as well bring up the other, because there's been a special guest voices every episode this season.
Oh, some fantastic ones.
And it didn't disappoint. It's not surprising that Peanut Hamper winds up in the same facility as Agamus, and the CBS robot, which is still there. Mm-hmm. And I expect the sequel to this episode because they've got to get loose.
I actually think that they are going to be a big threat at some point, whether it's the remaining episodes we have in season 3 or in season 4, but they're going to escape and they're going to become a major Star Trek villain on Lower Decks, I think. And it was great to hear Jeffrey Combs' voice again. It always is great to hear his voice.
Always.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something you could have liked, right, Kasey?
Oh, I couldn't like it. I loved it because it's him. And I was like, and it sets up, like you just said, I go, they're setting this up for episodes beyond here. This will be interesting.
I got a question.
Yes.
The Daystrom Institute is a big, famous place. Lots of things happen there. We saw what happened in Picard season 1 at the Daystrom Institute. Everything's great. They got a lot of smart people at the Daystrom Institute, you would think. But who thought, hey, let's put a bunch of evil supercomputers all next to each other because I'm sure nothing bad will happen?
Agnes Girardi.
Agnes Girardi. Wow. Okay. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything about that.
I mean, think about it. Who put the three of us together in a podcast? So that wasn't a wise decision either.
Agnes Girardi.
Not for the sake of trying. Anyway, so all in all, a fun episode. Some things that people didn't like. Some people liked a bunch of other things. It's not the last we're going to see of Peanut Hamper, I'm sure. I would like to see them come about a little further down the line instead of right away. But if we were doing what we think is going to happen in the future, we definitely are going to see Peanut Agamus at some point show up, and who knows what that's going to look like. It's a little scary. So anyway, Kasey, good episode for some of us, not for all of us, but hopefully next week will be something that you'll enjoy a little bit more. So what can we look forward to with episode 8, my friend?
Oh, well, Dan, next week, Boimler's holodeck movie sequel tries to live up to the original. It's episode 8 of Lower Decks, Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus. And we will be here, right here, to talk about it and all of it next week. But until then, remember that you can subscribe to Discovering Trek by searching for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or by downloading the Trek Geeks Podcast Network app.
And don't forget, you can support Discovering Trek and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by subscribing to bonus content on Patreon. Get access to the unedited audio of all our podcasts, because you're going to want to hear all of this stuff and a whole lot of other perks, Bill.
The whole time I'm sitting here going, Crisis Point 2, Paradockers. I have Dockers in my closet.
At least I spelled it right.
We'd like to take a moment to thank the following amazing producers of Discovering Trek. We are so truly grateful for their support. Mike Bovia, Steve Bovia, Chaz Bradshaw, Kyle Castillo, Peter Craig, Andy Davenport, Craig Ewing, Jackie and Chris Hackney, Kimberly Hartman, David Hood, Lionel Marchand, Matt McGonigal, Darren Metcalf, Charlie Mulvey, Sean O'Halloran, Casey Pettit, Jamie Rogers, Major Self, the amazing Casey Shafsky. Yes, Terry Shull, Jim Stoffel, Chris Trabuzio, Ken Tripp, the always on time Christina Werther, and the lovely and talented Jess Vashon. The senior producer of Trek Geeks is the effervescently exceptional Jude Tatman.
If you'd like to support Discovering Trek and the Trek Geeks, as Dan says it, Podcast Network, beam on over to patreon.com/TrekGeeks, where subscription levels start at a mere $8 a month.
Very mere. Of course, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out the other member podcasts here on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. So many great shows created by passionate fans who just want to share their love of Star Trek and Gene's vision. You can find all our podcasts, including where to listen, by visiting trekgeeks.com/listen. The Trek Geeks Podcast Network, no one, dare I say no one, talks Trek like we do.
No one. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us for our discussion on Lower Decks, Episode 7, A Mathematically Perfect Redemption, an unexpected return of Peanut Hamper, and perhaps the start of a very dangerous partnership, and more importantly, a new supervillain. As always, I need to give a huge shout out to my two co-hosts, Bill and Kasey. Guys, another fun discussion of an episode that really, in many of our opinions, was just fantastic. It seems that every week they're upping themselves from the previous week, and I really think it's great. I also want to thank all of you for taking time out of your schedules to listen to us talk all about Lower Decks Season 3. I'm looking forward to doing it all again next week with Star Trek Lower Decks Episode 8, Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus. So until next week, never stop discovering.
Music for Discovering Trek is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. Discovering Trek is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.